Good day, everybody, and welcome back to the Trooper's Garage. All right, we're going to be punching out another Halloween Project episode today. So, for the last couple of years, I have been doing a ghost projection special effect in the backyard. So, it looks like there's like ghosts floating out of our graveyard and whatnot. And I had a very elaborate and very hard to erect projector screen that was being held up by a bunch of P cords strung all over between my house and my trees, and I never really liked the way it looked, and it also took an inordinate amount of time to set up. So I wanted to come up with a different, better and more time effective means of getting that projector screen kind of up into the backyard while also keeping it mostly invisible at night to kind of maintain that effect of making it look like ghosts are coming up out of the graveyard. So without further delay, let's go ahead and get to what I put together. All right, so the basic design is really simple. I just took some 2x2s and 1x2s and screwed them together and made a rudimentary frame that was basically, I think, 54 and a half inches wide by about 7 feet tall. And it was pretty much the exact dimensions of the piece of screen that I'm using. And the 2x2s and 1x2s are just being held together by some simple kind of angle iron that you can pick up at virtually any hardware store. And the reason why I kind of put them together like this is I need to be able to quickly disassemble this after Halloween for storage down in the crawl space underneath the house. Otherwise, I would just leave it whole all year long. But unfortunately, I don't have the space to do that. Now, for this particular setup in my yard, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using similar pieces of that angle iron from the hardware store that are screwed into the railroad ties that kind of outline the pumpkin patch in the back of my front yard, because that's where I'm going to have the projector set up. So the legs of the screen themselves are going to go right into those pieces of angle iron right there to hold the whole thing upright. But obviously, your yard's probably going to be a little bit different, so in which case you could use rebar or some other kind of framing pieces to get the whole thing to stand up on its own. And then here's what it's going to look like when they're placed in there. All I need to do now is just kind of follow that up with some 1.25 inch, maybe 1 5/8 wood screws. The projector screen material itself is going to be held into place with some of these bulldog clamps that I got off of Amazon. And then obviously I spray painted them black so they don't show up at night. So I just have like 4 of these clamps on the uprights and then 3 or 4 across the top. And then that also allows me to kind of pull that material tight to kind of get all those wrinkles out and whatnot. And that really helps the whole screen to kind of disappear when it gets dark out. And that kind of helps the effect of having ghosts and whatnot look like they're floating up and out of the ground. And the projector screen itself is just kind of a gray, I believe it's called a chiffon fabric. And I got this from Walmart, honestly. And you can see it's kind of semi-translucent because the mesh itself is so fine. And this is kind of the desirable material we want for this project. I don't want like a white sheet or anything like that, because you'll be able to tell, oh, you're just projecting, an image onto a white sheet. But if you get this fine mesh material, this chiffon fabric, you can kind of see through it. So you can see the objects behind it, but then it's also the mesh is close enough and fine enough to where you can also see the image being projected on it, and that really helps the effect, that kind of 3D hologram effect. And here's the finished product installed in my front yard. So like I said, we put the legs of the frame into those iron angle pieces that I screwed into the railroad ties, and then I used some 1¼ wood screws into the legs of the screen itself. So in the daytime, obviously you can totally see it, but then when it gets dark, because everything's been painted black and because the screen itself is kind of semi-translucent, it almost completely disappears, and I think it'll look pretty awesome when we test it out tonight. So something to keep in mind is that even though the material itself is semi-translucent and a mesh, and it'll allow wind to go through it, you have essentially made a giant wind sail. So if I had just left it standing up like that, I guarantee a light breeze would have completely blown it over. So as you can see, I built a simple brace system out of a spare 2x2 that I had sitting in the garage, and I just notched it out, and it just sits on top of the screen itself, and I notched the back of it, and that just sits on the fence. And this just gives a little bit of extra stability, so that when the wind is pushing or pulling against it, it won't travel more than about 1/4 of an inch, and it won't blow the whole project over. With all the construction complete on the screen, all we have to do now is wait for it to get dark and give it a test run. Ooh, spooky. Well, everyone, I think following that successful test run, we can call this project done. I hope you found the video to be useful, and if you did, maybe think about giving us a like or even subscribing if you'd like to see some more Halloween builds in the future. This is Trooper 134 signing off, and I hope you have an awesome Halloween.